What does it actually feel like to have a healthy, normally regulated dopamine system? It's a provocative question to ask in the world that we live in. On average, screen time is approaching 7 hours a day, and the average person picks up their phone 300 times a day, the first time usually within seconds of waking up. A new notification, shocking war footage, a spicy pic, an outrageous rumor, funny meme, a bit of celebrity gossip, gruesome accident caught on camera, bunny munching on lettuce, 20,000 points for crushing some candy. We're never more than one swipe away from the next dopamine spike. We've all gotten used to this constant drip feed of entertainment and distraction, and it's so normal to us we don't even question it. But how does the brain respond to this constant barrage of stimulation that evolutionarily it was never designed to cope with? Well, like any biological system, it adapts. Which means that over time you become less and less sensitive to stimulation. And ironically, that makes you want and need and seek out even more stimulation. To put it bluntly, the average person today is an addict and walking around as a digital media consuming zombie. Always looking for the next hit, yet never finding real satisfaction. And so it's no wonder that anxiety, depression, social isolation, and the sense of meaninglessness are on the rise in lockstep with the rise in screen time and entertainment and distraction. And because all of this is so normalized, we don't even know what we're missing out on. So if all of this overstimulation is causing all these problems, then the solution might be a dopamine detox. What is a dopamine detox? Well, in short, it is removing all of these sources of stimulation for a while in order to give your brain a chance to reset. But wait, should you really do this? Because right now, you want to be using your phone. The prospect of using your phone less, deleting your social media apps, and cutting down or even cutting out consumption of things like entertainment media and junk food is not an attractive one. Frankly, it seems like too much of a sacrifice to give up on all those familiar comforts. So could this dopamine detox thing really be worth it, or is it just another silly trend you can safely ignore? To answer this question, let me share with you what my current experience of life is like. Now, why is my experience different? Who am I to talk about this? So here's 3 things you should know before we get into the list. 1. I've just completed the Spartan Mode challenge, where I was doing an extreme version of dopamine detox, cutting out all forms of media consumption and all sources of entertainment, and I did it for 30 days straight. 2. I've always been very cautious about my use of social media and my screen time. So even before this challenge, I was never a heavy user to begin with. And 3. I am 100% addiction free. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't gamble. I'm one of those people who's just out here raw dogging reality. The only really strong addiction I ever had was porn addiction, and I healed from that a long time ago. Now, all of this combined means that I can say with confidence my dopamine receptors are in a pretty good state right now. And let me tell you, it feels great. Here are the 4 main things I'm experiencing that I believe are a direct result of having healthy, non-overstimulated dopamine receptors in my brain. 1. I appreciate the small things. It happens to me all the time that I stop and just take a moment to appreciate something. And it's even for small things and things that are not new. For example, the feeling of grass under my feet and the sight of sunlight shining through the leaves when I go to the park in the morning. I go there every morning. I experience these things every single day, but I also appreciate them every single time. And this is just one example. I am constantly grateful for things. I constantly stop and take a moment to just feel grateful for something that's happening, or even just for being alive. Amazing. I mean, think about it. If you were stranded on an island, how long would it take you to get clean, drinkable running water out of a tap? Here's how this connects to dopamine. Appreciating the little things shows me that I do not need novelty or strong stimulation in order to get joy out of something. The more addicted you are to strong stimulation, the more you get used to these fast dopamine spikes you get from things like social media or also addictive substances, the less you can enjoy little things, like the more dependent you are on strong stimulation to feel anything at all. Plus, everything that's addictive tends to make you novelty seeking. You want a new thing, you want something different, which makes you less able to enjoy something if it's not new. So in that way, my experience of appreciating little things is the opposite of being a dopamine addict. 2, I'm motivated to do challenging work. I am generally motivated to do my work, and I noticed this even more strongly when I was doing the Spartan Mode challenge. And let me tell you, my work is not easy. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 10 years or so, And my experience is that as an entrepreneur, you are constantly struggling. You are constantly facing new problems. And you often do lots and lots of work where it's totally uncertain whether this is going to work, where you don't get a lot of encouraging feedback, where you kind of just have to grind it out and hope that something comes of it. Sometimes it can feel almost impossible. Like right now, with my work for Quit by Healing, I'm faced with this challenge. How can I help, hopefully, millions of men overcome porn addiction and improve their mental health? Overcoming an addiction is very difficult. And porn addiction is especially difficult because it's so incredibly accessible. It's like everybody has a drug dispenser in their pocket. Plus there's all this shame and guilt and all these difficult emotions tied up with it as well. This is a very difficult challenge, and yes, at times it feels near impossible. At times working on this can feel overwhelming, and I feel an immense amount of pressure and responsibility to make this happen, to create something that really works for as many people as possible. It's important to get this message out there, but it's also difficult to get a message like this out there. It's not exactly the most algorithm or advertiser friendly topic, And all this is to say, none of this is easy. But I'm super motivated to do this work, even though it's so hard and even though it's so full of uncertainty. Here's how this connects to dopamine. I am motivated to do the work itself. I'm motivated by even small signs of progress. I don't need constant clear signs of reward. I don't need constant positive feedback to keep going. I have a longer term horizon for what motivates me because of course I want to reach goals. Of course I want to get positive feedback, but I'm okay with doing lots and lots of work in order to maybe get that reward in the future. In other words, I'm motivated to do the kind of work where I have to earn my dopamine. I don't just get it for free.
Watch out for the free dopamine, right? The free dopamine comes from junk food. The free dopamine comes from your Instagram and social media and all that. So just get away from the free dopamine. Earn your dopamine with burpees and...
This is the opposite of what you get used to when you are addicted to digital media, where you're constantly getting tiny drips of reward. And as soon as something is slightly uncomfortable, like even if you're watching shorts and the first 2 seconds of this isn't quite stimulating enough, you just immediately swipe to the next thing and get a little more stimulation. Digital media trains you to always be in your comfort zone and always seek the simplest, most comfortable way to get instant rewards without having to do any work at all. So what I'm experiencing here is the motivation of the complete opposite. Number 3, I'm more interested in depth. I noticed that I have a strong preference for deep experiences over shallow ones. For instance, I'm much more interested in reading a book than in scrolling through TikTok. And for the record, I literally never scroll through TikTok because it's never the most interesting option for me.
When a man really loves
It's all nonsense. I'd rather do almost anything else. And even if we look at the kinds of books I read, I'm more interested in reading books that are kind of difficult, books that challenge me, books where I really have to stop and think, or books that challenge my worldview. This is much more appealing to me than reading something that's overly simplistic and made to be easy to digest and maybe just confirms my existing worldviews. It makes me feel good but doesn't actually teach me anything new. Some other examples of deep rather than shallow experiences. I like to go on long walks. I like to have long conversations with friends. On a walk or during a conversation, you're getting much less stimulation and much less variety than if you're scrolling through a social media feed. But you're also experiencing more richness and more depth. Here's how this connects to dopamine. My brain isn't constantly craving the next quick spike. And that means I have the capacity as well as the desire for experiences that are slower and rewarding in a different way. And as a result, I can have the kind of experience that I wouldn't have access to if I was constantly chasing instant gratification. For example, having an hours-long conversation with a friend where one or both of you are constantly checking your phone in between is just a very different experience than if you're locked in and present with each other the entire time. Number 4, a calm mind. This is probably the biggest effect I experience. My mind is generally calm. I don't have that itch. There's not a part of my brain that's constantly wanting to reach for the phone or constantly wanting to escape whatever I'm doing right now to see if maybe something more exciting is happening on a different screen. And this goes for all other addictions as well. I'm never battling with myself about, oh, should I have a cigarette now or not? Or do I go out and drink, or did I drink too much last week, or whatever. I'm not having these kinds of internal debates where part of me wants something that another part of me knows isn't good for me. In general, there's no desire to distract myself or disengage, and that makes me more present and just more content with being here and now. Interestingly, I also don't experience FOMO. And what I noticed here is that when I use social media a little bit, I do experience FOMO. The 2 types of social media I do actually use when I'm outside of a detox challenge are YouTube and Twitter. And I try to regulate my use of these, but I notice that even when I use them just a little bit, there's always the FOMO. I'm missing out. I want to check and kind of catch up with the feed. But when I cut them out to zero, the FOMO disappears, even though technically I'm missing out on all of it. Here's how this connects to dopamine. I think this is the primary factor of what a healthy, well-balanced dopamine system feels like. It is just the absence of that itch, the absence of part of your brain being occupied with the kind of should I or shouldn't I, the absence of constantly feeling like you're missing out or you want to be doing something else. And I can't put it into words how much better this makes my life, how much nicer it is to live inside my mind when I feel like this than when I have been overstimulating myself a bit too much and my mind becomes more frantic and I just feel that addiction creeping up on me. So this factor alone would be worth it for me. Okay, hold on. All of this sounds nice, but is this really because of dopamine detox, or was I just lucky? Was I born feeling like this? Let me assure you, I was not born like this. First of all, I know what it's like to be addicted. When I was younger, I was pretty much addicted to video games, spent way too much time on them, and was always seeking that kind of distraction and stimulation I got from gaming. Plus, I was addicted to porn for many years of my life, and while the gaming could be categorized as just a hobby, the porn was definitely an addiction. And also another piece of evidence that all of this is actually related to dopamine detox is this. Before I did the Spartan Mode challenge, I was using some social media and I was watching shows and movies just moderately, right? I was keeping this stuff under control, but I was consuming it. And I noticed a huge difference, even going from moderate consumption to zero consumption during the challenge. And much of what I describe in this list is stuff that I really feel amplified. The less I consume, the stronger these effects become. So this is why I'm confident to say that yes, these are actually the effects of dopamine detox. I hope that my description of what it feels like to live like this makes you want to try it out for yourself. And you're probably wondering, how can I do this? How can I experience the same effects? If you just do a dopamine detox, is this going to happen to you as well? And my answer is probably, but it might not be enough. I believe there are actually two factors in my life that contribute to me feeling like this. The first one is obviously cutting out stimulation. So this is the dopamine detox part. Look at all the stuff that you do that is entertaining and distracting and is giving you instant gratification. Look at all of the stuff that keeps you stuck inside your comfort zone and all the things that you do to distract yourself from anything that's unpleasant in your life. If you remove all that, that's a dopamine detox. And yes, this can be uncomfortable to begin with. Don't expect that you'll feel amazing right away. You might have to acclimate to this and you might actually have a pretty hard time for a week or two before your brain actually starts resetting and you start feeling effects like the enjoyment of little things much more than before. So you have to give yourself some time to get used to this. And this, by the way, is why I recommend that you do a pretty extreme detox and you do it for a long time. Because if you do a dopamine detox for like one weekend, you're not likely to experience many effects from that. Because think about it, if you've been constantly glued to your phone for the last like 15 years, and then you do a dopamine detox for what, one weekend, how much of a difference can that really make? Factor number 2 is cultivating gratitude. I practice gratitude every single day, and I've been doing it for a very long time. Part of my daily routine is to sit down and write down at least 3 things I'm grateful for, and try to really tune into that feeling of gratitude. But also throughout the day, I cultivate gratitude very deliberately. Basically, I have trained my brain to find things to feel grateful for. And I mention this as a factor because, look, I'm sure you could do a dopamine detox and the entire time just focus on what you're missing. Just focus on everything that you don't like about it. I'm sure you could, if you really made an effort, do a dopamine detox and spend the entire time just being grumpy about it and complaining about all the things you're missing and complaining about how you don't feel good and so on. And you could give yourself an experience of, I hated this and there were no positive effects. Like if you really put your mind to it, you can have a bad time doing even something that is generally very good for you. And if you really wanted to, you can then do the dopamine detox, feel bad the whole time, and then come back here and say, see, I told you it doesn't work. And now you have an extra justification to stay addicted to all the stuff you're already addicted to. And obviously my recommendation is don't do that because you have nothing to prove and there's no point in just keeping yourself miserable. So my recommendation is do a dopamine detox and combine it with gratitude practice. This is a great opportunity to start training your brain to be more grateful for the things you already have instead of always focusing on the things you don't have. And in my personal experience, combining these two things seems to be a pretty good way to experience bliss fairly often. So that is my take on what it feels like to have a healthy, normally regulated dopamine system and why it's so different in a world where everyone's an overstimulated zombie. If you have any questions about this, go ahead and leave a comment below. And also, if you appreciate the kind of content I make and the message I'm trying to put out there, leave a like, leave a comment, engage with this video, give the algorithm some signal that says, yes, this is important, and gets it to show it to other people. It really makes a difference. Finally, if you want to know more about the Spartan Mode Challenge and how to do it, check out these videos next.